Starting us off at number 10, the Kaden meteorite. While it may not have been the biggest meteorite to crash into the Earth, it certainly raised many questions once it was here. On December 30th, 1980, what looked like a fireball was seen in the sky hurling its way towards the Soviet military base. Now, upon impact, they discovered a surprisingly small stone weighing only about 4 pounds, but it was what was inside the stone that caused a commotion. Inside the meteorite was a wide range of incredibly rare and unique minerals, many of which are not found in nature, causing quite a bit of confusion and debate around the stone's origins. Some scientists believe it originated from the Martian moon of Phobos, but no one really knows for certain. While there have been several meteorites from Mars to land on Earth, if suspicions are true, the Kaden would be the first Martian moon rock to be found on Earth. And who knows what that could mean. Next up at number 9, a piece of the moon. As fate would have it, a piece of the moon made its way into the desert of Morocco, and in 2014, it was discovered and sold privately to a collector. The moon chunk weighed about 6 pounds and was extremely rare, as very few pieces of lunar material have been known to crash land onto the planet. Now, as cool as this seems, scientists have discovered that moon dust can cause huge health risks, and long-term exposure is highly toxic and has the potential to even cause death. So whoever has this piece of moon rock better have it sealed tight, because it could be the end of them. Next up at number 8, Tomanawos. To understand the craziness of this meteorite, we have to rewind a few billion years. Well, 4.5 billion years to be exact. Meteorites are usually made of iron and nickel. These iron and nickel atoms were formed inside stars that eventually exploded, sending the elements rocketing across the nebula. Over time, the elements were forced together to create what we call protoplanets, which were the first planet-like orbs of the solar system. Now, 4.5 billion years ago, Tomanawos was at the core of one of these protoplanets, but at some point in time likely collided with another protoplanet, sending huge chunks back into space. Then, 17,000 years ago, it crashed down into the Earth and landed on an ice cap in Canada. It wasn't discovered until thousands of years later, and by that time it had made quite the journey down to Oregon. The 15-ton rock caused quite a stir and even a lawsuit when in 1902 a man tried to steal it from the indigenous people and charge others to see the strange and mysterious space rock. But the joke was on him, as the Oregon Iron and Steel Company actually owned the land where he'd found the meteorite and sued for its return. Whatever it was, there was something about this meteorite that drew people in. And who knows, maybe it really was cursed. Next up at number 7, a strange black object. In July of this year, Australian farmer Mike Miners was doing his usual morning survey of his farm when all of a sudden he spotted something that caught his eye. There in the distant part of the grasslands was a large jet black object measuring roughly 9 feet and sticking straight up out of the ground. Unsure of what was going on, he took a closer look at the object and eventually decided to call the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to see if they could help. Once he was on the phone with them, they quickly urged him to call NASA directly. Eventually, it was discovered to be a piece of space junk, likely from the SpaceX Dragon capsule, but many conspiracy theorists didn't seem to buy this answer, believing it to be some kind of remnant from a UFO. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea if those conspiracy theorists are losing their minds or if they are onto something, but anything that is falling from outer space will always freak me out. Coming in at number 6, the microscopic diamond. There are many things people can expect to find falling from the sky, but tiny microscopic space diamonds would not be at the top of my list. Back in 1969, an unexpected meteorite came crashing down into Mexico, which led to one of the biggest manhunts trying to find all the scattered fragments. One of the strange finds were small diamond fragments containing, now stay with me here, isotopic signatures of materials formed prior to the existence of our solar system. Which, listen, I'm not really blessed with much of a science brain, but essentially it's really frickin' crazy what they found. The origins of the diamond is up for debate. There are 2 theories about how they came to be. The first is the formation inside a giant star that long ago exploded in a supernova, and the second is from an asteroid impact in space, but either way, it's an incredibly strange find that raised more questions upon its discovery than it answered. Next up at number 5, a molten object. Maybe it was aliens, or maybe it's some cursed artifact from outer space, but either way, no one had any clue what they'd found. Back in 2016, an inexplicable molten object fell from the sky in Siberia and was actually caught on film. 2 YouTubers said they received the footage from a witnessing Russian man and wasted no time posting the video for all to see. Whatever it was covered in green flames, an unrecognizable white foamy substance, and grabbed the attention of local firemen who can be seen attempting to put out the giant and strange green flames. Many online viewers were quick to try and figure out what exactly they were witnessing, and some said it was probably a satellite that fell onto the Earth, but some swear they saw a UFO hovering over Turkey just 3 days prior and believe the object to have been the crashed extraterrestrial ship. Maybe the aliens were trying to send us a message? Let's just hope it was a crashed satellite. Coming in at number 4, fireballs. There are few things that make us worry about the end of days more than giant fire orbs raining down from the sky and terrorizing our planet. Well, in September of 2019, it seemed like just that was happening in Chile when huge and mysterious flaming objects lit up the sky, cascading over the largest island in Chile, horrifying the locals. The fireballs plummeted to the earth and caused 7 bushfires across the island, though luckily no one was injured. Initially, most assumed it was meteorites crashing down, but after a few days inspecting the site, no traces were found at any of the 7 locations. Officials were confused by the findings, as the only other logical explanation would be space debris, but that as well seemed to have been ruled out by many. So if it wasn't a meteorite and it wasn't a rogue piece of space debris, what could have fallen from the sky? Could it have anything to do with an unknown space civilization? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Coming in at number 3, metal shreds. Long before Chile saw the flaming balls of fire crashing down, Argentina was met with an equally terrifying phenomenon. Back in 1991, out of nowhere, giant shards of flaming metal appeared glowing in the sky. The ominous showers appeared to be darting down towards the planet, terrifying the locals. This metallic rain turned out to be fragments from a Russian space station named the Salyut 7, which to this day is still considered to be one of the largest human-made objects to re-enter the atmosphere. Now, of course, engineers made many attempts to guide the fragments toward the Atlantic Ocean, but as the station was in a low orbit to the planet, they were not really able to properly redirect anything. So soon the 88,000 pounds of metal were crashing down to the Earth, and although no one was injured, it certainly terrorized all who witnessed it. Coming in at number 2, Vladimir Komarov. Infamously known as the man who fell from space, Vladimir was a famous Russian astronaut, or cosmonaut as they were called during the Cold War space race. Back in 1967, he embarked on a crazy mission that, although he was completely trained to complete, was ultimately rushed. Allegedly, the spacecraft had a multitude of structural issues, and despite engineers warning the Soviet officials that the craft was not ready, they continued with the mission as planned. Vladimir took off and made his way up into the eternity of space, and even executed 16 orbits around the Earth. But something went awry with his mission, so he was instructed to make his way back down to Earth. However, things went south upon trying to re-enter the atmosphere when his parachute would not engage, and Vladimir plummeted back towards the Earth, crashing in a horrific explosion. Rumor has it that while he was plummeting to his fate, he was screaming at the Soviets for forcing him to do this mission. And while he may not have been something that originated from space, it was certainly cursed from the very beginning of its journey. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Roswell incident. Back in 1947, a huge metallic object crashed down on the Earth, causing a major uproar for conspiracy theorists across the globe. Now, normally I'm not one to jump on the conspiracy wagon, but I don't know how anyone can look me in the eye and tell me that this is not the spinning image of a flying saucer. I mean, come on. Now, here is where it gets crazy. After the dust from the initial sighting settled, the Roswell Air Force released a statement admitting that they had found a flying disc, but then quickly retracted that statement, saying instead it was simply a conventional weather balloon, and have stuck to this story ever since. But this change in description caused many to believe the government was covering up valuable information. Then, in 1979, Lieutenant Jesse Marcel, a key figure in the whole debacle, was interviewed for a documentary about the incident and admitted that despite what they told newspapers in 1947, that he truly believed it was an extraterrestrial entity that was found that day, and that the government had ordered him to keep quiet. Now, that isn't suspicious at all. So what do you guys think? Government weather balloon or top secret alien spaceship?
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have time travel. The first large-scale image to be publicly released that was taken by the James Webb Telescope was a mega deep sky image of a galaxy cluster called SMACS 0723, which sits over 5 billion light years away from us. The reason this cluster is so profound is because it offers us a glimpse into the early universe. This cluster, despite only being a couple 100 million light years across, which in the cosmos really isn't a large space at all, still is the home to thousands of galaxies. But if you look even closer at the image, you can see even more. In between these galaxies are twisting and arcing bands of light, which are even more distant galaxies, but their light is being distorted as it passes through this dense cluster of galaxies. Some of these galaxies are the oldest ever observed, some over 13 billion years old, and this is important because we don't yet know fully how galaxies formed in the early days of the universe, and James Webb is helping us put those puzzle pieces together. In our number 9 spot today we have the complex galaxies. And with these distant galaxies comes a realization about their structures. Some of these galaxies are far more complex than astronomers had once expected. In a study into the deep field image, researchers found a surprisingly high number of distant galaxies that are shaped like disks. Basically, while using Hubble, scientists believed or had a theory that early galaxies were often more distorted by their interactions with neighboring galaxies, and that these distant galaxies were more irregularly shaped than ones nearby, which, not unlike the Milky Way, are normally more regularly formed in the shape of disks. This changed though with the Webb observations, because this telescope revealed that there are up to 10 times as many distant disk-shaped galaxies than what was previously thought. According to some experts, because of the fact that this contradicts what was once thought about the evolution of galaxies, that much more research needs to be put into this specifically to figure out exactly what this means and how it changes our theories moving forward. In our number 8 spot today we have cosmic noon. Moving on a little later into galactic evolution, one study into Webb's observations focused on cosmic noon, which was a period approximately 3 billion years after the Big Bang. It is an important period because of the fact that this is the time when star formation peaked in the universe and the most light was created. An astronomer at the University of California, Santa Cruz named Ren Seuss examined images taken by both Hubble and Webb of galaxies at cosmic noon, and this is when Ren realized something. The infrared wavelengths detected by Webb showed that the massive galaxies looked significantly smaller than they did in the Hubble images. Of this discovery, Seuss said, quote, "It potentially changes our whole view of how galaxy sizes evolve over time. Based on Hubble images, it was thought or suggested that galaxies start out small and grow larger over time, but these Webb images are showing that maybe this isn't the case and that things might be a little more complicated than anticipated." In our number 7 spot today we have the exoplanet atmosphere. While there are many tasks that the James Webb will be taking on through its career, one of them is to study alien exoplanets, most especially to figure out what their atmospheres are made of. To do this, when the exoplanet passes in front of its parent star, the light from the star of course, passes through the planet's atmosphere before continuing onto its journey wherever. Whatever the atmosphere is made up of, whatever the elements are, it changes the nature of the light, and this is something that James Webb can pick up on. WASP 96b is an exoplanet that we've had our eye on for a while now, and it is a giant gassy planet that orbits close to its parent star, and now it is being used to test Webb's abilities before moving on to more challenging targets, such as Earth-like planets that orbit sun-like stars. There are a few incredible discoveries that Webb has made in doing this, like the first detection in an exoplanet atmosphere of sulfur dioxide, and new readings are even revealing signs of active chemistry within the atmosphere. This is all to say that these tests are yielding incredible results, which is extremely promising when it comes to the future and the understanding of exoplanets. In our number 6 spot today, we have star formation. People who are busy studying galactic chemistry have been receiving some more complicated and interesting data from Webb. One analysis examined light emitted by galaxies that had a redshift of 5 or greater. In this analysis, they found a surprising richness in elements like oxygen. This is important because astronomers had thought that the process of chemical enrichment, which is the process where stars fuse hydrogen and helium in order to form heavier elements, they thought that this took a while, but this analysis made them realize that it is happening in earlier galaxies. This has led experts to say that they really need to start rethinking the speed at which we believe star formation occurs. In our number 5 spot today, we have the star life cycle. Speaking of star formation, Webb is showing us both the birth as well as the death of stars. Images produced by Webb of both the Carina Nebula as well as the Southern Ring Nebula are incredible. The Carina Nebula is a star nursery. It is the birthplace for new stars, and the powerful Webb instruments are able to pierce through the gas clouds and show us unbelievable moments in these stars' creations. On the other end is the Southern Ring Nebula, which is produced by a star not unlike the Sun shortly after its demise. By being able to study these different star life stages, we can piece together more about the stories of these stars themselves. In our number 4 spot today, we have starlight. Back in September of this year, 2022, the James Webb Space Telescope spotted a set of concentric angular rings around a giant but distant star. Of course, we needed to know more, so researchers dove further into the images and found something incredible. A study revealed that these ripples turned out to be puffs of organic dust that were created and then spread across the universe by an odd star system. This might just seem like a cool space occurrence, but this marked the first time researchers were able to find evidence of starlight moving visible matter beyond our solar system, which is absolutely incredible. I mentioned how this star system is odd, and that is because it is made up of 2 stars that orbit each other. In our number 3 spot today, we have Stephan's Quintet. You may be familiar with this term because it was another one of the first photos publicly released from the James Webb Telescope, but it's possible that maybe you didn't know exactly what you were looking at. Stephan's Quintet is a visual group of 5 galaxies, 4 of which form the first compact galaxy group ever discovered. These 4 galaxies will all likely eventually merge with each other, but until that happens, we have these stunning visuals of them all dancing together. Space telescopes like James Webb have provided some insights into some emissions coming from between the galaxy group. It is now believed to be shockwave in the intergalactic gas, which is caused by one galaxy falling into the center of the group at, roughly the speed of several million kilometers per hour. Just space stuff. In our number 2 spot today, we have the DART mission. So I'm sure we all remember earlier this year when NASA's DART mission slammed into an asteroid just to see if we could potentially redirect an asteroid in the future if it were on a collision course with Earth. They tested this planetary defense mechanism and it actually seems to have been largely successful, and among those watching was none other than the James Webb Telescope. Since the mission, information that Webb collected has been sent back to us on Earth, and it is giving us more insight into how to ensure we are using this technology to our advantage and to see how we can improve it. In our number 1 spot today, we have the cloud discoveries. Speaking of exoplanets, James Webb has observed one that has evidence of silicate-rich clouds. Well, it's actually a brown dwarf that is about 20 times the size of Jupiter. It is called VHS 1256b, and it orbits 2 small red dwarfs and is 72 light-years away from Earth. Webb has also used its skills to reveal details in a gas cloud called Doradus 30, which received the nickname tarantula due to its very spooky appearance. This tarantula nebula is located about 161,000 light years away, and it resides in the Large Magellanic Cloud, and I mean aside from our very own Milky Way, it is the brightest star-forming region in our neck of the cosmic woods.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Gliese 581g. Kicking this list off with an exoplanet hiding in the constellation Libra. Yeah, to all my fellow Libras out there, this one's for you. Happy early birthday. It was discovered back in 2010, but Gliese 581g, still to this day, its confirmation is hard to pinpoint. Yeah, the thing with exoplanets is that they're a little far away. They're a little hard to see out there. But somehow the fine minds over at the University of Puerto Rico at Arecibo calls Gliese 581 the top candidate for alien life. You heard it here, folks. There we go. It's only sitting 20 light years away from our very own sun, and Gliese 581g is 3 times as large as Earth. So to all my Libras, bring a friend or two. Let's party it up. We got room. If you're a fan of New Year's parties, again, this is the planet for you. Every 30 days, we're counting down to a new year. So we don't have to wait too long to party. Off to a good start. Number 9, HD 85512b. This next planet's in HD, Chris. There we go. Put on your 3D glasses. Announced in 2011 alongside 50 other planets. Okay. HD 85512b was discovered by the High Accuracy Radial Velocity Planet Searcher instrument, or to save you some breath, HARPS for short, over in Chile. Yeah, Chile's casually exploring 50 planets over there on their weekend. Okay. It's wild how some of these discoveries happened so long ago, but we don't talk about them nearly enough. Again, same deal as the Gliese 581g, this planet too is 3 times the size of Earth. It's actually 3.5 times bigger. Yeah, as far as commutes go, it'll take some time to get there. Yeah, we're still working on that part. The HD planet hides around 35 light years away from us. This one you can find in the constellation Vela, aka the snail. Is it truly habitable? Is there water on this planet? Well, that's to be determined. Our boy James Webb's gonna take a peek real soon. Number 8. Gliese 581e. Wait a minute, how many Glises are there? Is a single Gliese a goose? What's going on here? In typical part 2 fashion, I had to include another Gliese. There's actually 4 of them in total. I'm not going to do all 4 though. For more than 4 years, the HARP spectrograph attached to the ESO telescope in Chile, they were finding groundbreaking discoveries for 4 years straight. Astronomers found the lightest exoplanet so far to this day. The lightest planet, that's crazy. This one is quite small compared to others on this list. Gliese 581e is only twice the mass of our Earth, whereas the planet furthest out, Gliese 581d, orbits its star every 67 days. While Gliese 581e completes its orbit every 3 days. You know what I mean? Yeah, having a birthday every 3 days? Oh, what a nightmare that would be. I'm never going to this planet. This one can stay off our radar. Little small Gliese, little Gliese. Number 7, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon Musk tweeting about going to Mars or whatever he's doing over there, buying Twitter, I guess. But when NASA talks about it, I get a weird feeling, you know? It's NASA, you know? They're old school. They're like, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. Yeah. That's just it, that's the tweet. In 2022, just back in January, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. This is huge. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting, but we would really need to get more evidence to say that we've identified life." End quote. Okay, so we're close. It sounds like we're a little close. I don't know. Side note, imagine going on a Willy Wonka trip to Mars with Elon. Do we want to go? Like, he's announcing all these trips to Mars. I don't want to do that. I can't even drive to Ottawa for 4 hours, let alone Mars for years. No way. I'm homesick already. Number 6, Ryan Graves' UFO sightings. I mentioned this a little bit back in part 1, but I of course have to add more. Back in 2017, a $22 million defense program was put in place. It was called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now its purpose was to study military encounters with UFOs. And at this point, Navy pilots were coming out with their own story. Their eyewitness account of seeing a UAP, or a UFO if you're old school. Eventually, come 2019, senators felt the need to be briefed on these sightings. It was that serious. After a vote by the Senate Intelligence Committee in June 2020, it was agreed that UAP reports were now to get added to the Intelligence Authorization Act for 2021 and going forward. That's crazy. That's why more and more footage is coming out now every other week, you know what I mean? These incidents were filmed ages ago, but only now are they being released. It's kind of cool. According to the Times, 120 incidents were studied during this case, and it turns out the US military is not responsible for any of the 120. If they happen to be advanced drones sent to spy on the military, it's kind of important to find out who sent them, know what I mean? And recently, a former Navy pilot, Ryan Graves, he spoke out to 60 Minutes, and he explained that these UAPs would pop up during training exercises every day for at least a couple of years. He says, and I quote, "If these were tactical jets from another country that were hanging out up there, it would be a massive issue. But because it looks slightly different, we're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're happy to just ignore the fact that these are out there watching us train every day." That's a quote from Ryan Graves, real pilot. And these are goosebumps from me. Awesome, I'm terrified. Are aliens real? What are we doing, man? Like, let's move on before I faint. My gosh. Number 5. Milky Way radio burst. On April 28th, 2020, 2 radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves, and they only lasted just a millisecond, but they left astronomers baffled. The reason for this is because this was the first time a fast radio burst had been detected this close to Earth. This signal was located only 30,000 light years from Earth, which places it in our Milky Way galaxy. That's pretty damn close. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or again, CHIME if you want to save breath, they explained that the signal was so easy to pick up that CHIME wasn't even looking its direction and it still noticed the signal. It was loud and clear right in their peripheral vision. And another telescope, STARE 2, also saw it clear as day. Well, it looks like whatever the cause for the signal, someone or something, we saw it. So now what? We found you. You can come out now. Number 4. The Lorimer burst. This is a fast radio burst that was detected long ago. This was back in 2007, and it was named, of course, after the person who spotted it, Duncan Lorimer. Well, actually, it was discovered when Duncan assigned his student, David Narkovec, to look through archival data taken in 2001 by the Parkes radio dish in Australia. That's when they noticed. After analyzing this data, it was found that there was a dispersed burst that occurred on July 24th, 2001. This burst was less than 5 milliseconds long, and it was located just 3 degrees from the small Magellanic Cloud. It still isn't quite clear what caused said signal, but it's thought that perhaps it may have been a singular event, such as a supernova, or an Avengers level threat. One of the two. Number 3. Light shifts. Back in 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a star that was newly discovered. Yeah, shifts in light. What's that about? This star sits about 1,280 light years away from Earth, and these shifts were very similar, as if something was passing in front of our view of the star. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or meteors or anything like that, so in turn, Jason whipped up an interesting theory that's lived rent-free in my head ever since. He stated that it's possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a slow orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Or maybe it's an asteroid. One of the two. Either way, I'm scared. Again. Number 2. Mount Rainier. Not to be confused with Mount Chiliad, although there's definitely aliens there as well. Mount Rainier in Washington was bumping and buzzing back in 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold made the first modern report of a flying saucer, or a UAP. Apparently it was a flying egg, actually, that's what it looked like. Kenneth saw 9 circular-shaped objects flying in formation. The classic formation, and they were flying at twice the speed of sound. So the Idaho pilot told the Air Force, and they laughed it off. They didn't believe him at all. He took this claim to his grave. Kenneth stood by what he saw until his death later in 1984. He said that he saw UAPs. He reached out to the Seattle Times in 1977, long before the movie Signs was made, and he said, "I made my report because I thought it was my duty. It was the only proper and American thing to do. I saw what I saw." End quote. And also end point. I'm, again, terrified. And finally, number 1. The lights. Okay, imagine you're driving home one night after a long shift at work. Maybe you worked late and it's midnight. You're driving and you see a V formation, the classic formation, in the sky made up of yellow and orange lights. Do you pull over? Do you assume you're just, beyond exhausted and maybe this is all in your head? Because that's what I would do. Back in 2001, on July 14th, drivers along the New Jersey Turnpike saw just that. It was a touch after midnight and cars legit pulled over and people got out to get a better look at what was in the sky. Everybody looked at this thing for around 15 minutes. It was just hovering over top of the Arthur Kill Waterway right between Staten Island and New Jersey. Just floating there, just doing alien stuff. One eyewitness, Joe Mavasio, recalls the sighting as one of the most amazing things he had ever seen. And then just like that, the lights vanished. They faded out one by one in typical alien fashion. Daniel Tarrant of the Carteret Police Department recalls seeing this with his own eyes as well. It was 16 golden covered lights in a V formation. Aliens are fun and all, but keep your eyes on the roads, my friends, I'm not looking at anything. Aliens or not, 10 and 2, we're getting home. That's it. Seatbelts, I'm checking those mirrors. No aliens back there, we're good.
Now, number 10, a Pluto slug. Some people say Pluto isn't a planet or just a main planet anymore, just a dwarf planet. And to that, I say,
No, Pluto is a real planet in my heart, okay? Anyways, on to what really matters. In 2016, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft got some nice pics of an icy region on Pluto's surface. If you look at the picture, there's like a little black formation in the center, and behind it is a trail. So it looks like a little slug has been making its way across the icy terrain, carving its own little path, making its way through this just desolate space. No, okay, I'm not crying because it's actually a slug, because it probably isn't. The scientists are saying it's likely a dirty block of water ice floating in a denser solid of nitrogen, so not a slug, but like it looks like it. It still is a mystery on what exactly it is, because that's more a hypothesis, you could say, but it's probably not a slug. But it doesn't stop me from thinking, like, doesn't that sound like a nice children's book or something? The slug on Pluto. It'd be so cute. That's all I'm thinking. On to number 9. The Mars spoon? Question mark? So this is a much closer planet than Pluto, who is still a planet in my heart. So this is Mars. So on a photo captured by the beloved NASA Curiosity rover, you can see what looks like a spoon, possibly? Like, it looks like a spoon, honestly. There's a handle, check. Mini concave element on the end of the handle, also check. Yes, it just looks like it's covered in dust because it's on the surface of Mars, which is, you know, a red, dusty planet, but spoon, nonetheless. This was spotted by a YouTube user called UFO Hunter, which led to more people kind of agreeing and being like, yeah, it looks kind of like a spoon. From then on, more people were questioning, just like, yo, where did this spoon come from? Was a Martian eating an ice cream sundae before an entire Martian race was just wiped out? And so that's kind of what UFO Hunter was thinking, saying it may be left over from a lost civilization, but we could just be projecting our ideas onto a clump of space dust, honestly. What if it's one of those things where you just touch it and it crumbles? Could be. I don't know. At number 8, fish rock. Is this another thing we could just be projecting? This fish-looking thing spotted on Mars is probably just a rock, but we gotta remember, Mars once had an ocean even bigger than the Arctic Ocean. And even if it could be a rock, and probably is a rock, look at the similarities to a fish. An upturned nose, a fin, and even a finned tail too. Have I ever caught a fish? No. And have I tried? Yes, but if I did catch one, I bet it would look like this, and I bet it would also be a rock that I was trying to convince people was a fish, but let's move on to number 7. Face on Jupiter. So yes, let's hop on over to another planet, our big one in our solar system, the big old gas giant Jupiter. And now this image shows what looks like a derpy looking face on the gas giant. It even has a lovely name. Wait for it. Jovi McJupiter face. Very nice, very cute. So this face was awarded that beautiful name by Jason Major, a citizen scientist who rotated a photo that NASA took. Now, NASA's Juno spacecraft sent down an unaltered photo, and Major was like, nah. Let's interpret these two storms as eyes and the wider swirling red part as a mouth, which is genius. Now, Jovi McJupiter face obviously shows we can see the beauty in art, in anything, in nature and life. So now, the next section that we're going to be talking about is staying within the realm of our solar system, but going in a little closer, a little smaller. So let's take a peek at the moons we have. So at number 6, we have Ravioli Moon. This delectable little treat of a moon is one of Saturn's moons. Its name is Pan, and yes, it looks like a little treat of ravioli. And ravioli gets tossed in a pan with butter or oil, right? Does that blend the two names together enough for you? Connections. Fun. Anyways, the reason it looks like the pasta is because material from Saturn's rings falls onto Pan's equator, and the buildup results in the really unique buildup on the equator that makes me think, you know, ravioli. But maybe if you don't have food on the brain, you may think Pan looks more like a flying saucer, and in that case, right on. But for me, ravioli. On to number 5, Death Star Moon. The second and last of our honorable moon mentions is Mimas, or Mimas, aka the Death Star Moon. Now this is another of Saturn's many moons, and this one garners a few more eyes because of its similarities to the Death Star from Star Wars. And you know, the big dish on the Death Star? Boom, big crater on Mimas. Is this really the Death Star in disguise? Probably not, since it's been orbiting Saturn for a bit, plus that idea was mainly for a fictional universe. Also mainly, this moon is really big. So Mimas is 396 kilometers in diameter, and the first Death Star and second Death Star were both between 160 and 140 kilometers in diameter. So if you're thinking, yeah, but what about the third Death Star? Well, that one's too big, measuring about 900 kilometers in diameter, so it's not that one either. So it's not the Death Star in disguise, so you can, you know, exhale and breathe a little bit. But it is a cool looking moon, so Yep. Okay, so next up is not only out of this world, but also out of this solar system. The next three we have are nebulas, which, if you don't know, are super cool on their own, even if they don't look like anything in particular, but these next three have the added X factor of looking just really cool. At number 4, we have Horsehead Nebula. So this first nebula we're looking at was captured by the Hubble Space Telescope back in 2013. The stunning nebula got the nickname Horsehead Nebula because of its looks. Think back to cloud watching when you were younger and seeing the shapes in them, and you can see that this nebula looks like the head and neck of a horse in this image with the nose of the horse facing the left. And unfortunately, we can't pay this little horsey a visit because it's about 1,500 light years away from the Orion constellation. And for reference, Orion's constellation is 243 to 1,360 light years away from us, so little ways away, but you can still admire it for its beautiful looks. This next one, number 3, is Space Crab. And so this one is quite a ways further. It's about 6,500 light years away from Earth, and it's the Crab Nebula. Now, let's look a bit more at this 5-layered composite image of this bad boy. So the composite image, it looks like something out of a movie. 1, stunning. And then again, 2, the colors, magnificent, such range. Do I sound like I'm impersonating Jonathan Van Ness? Yes. It looks like an artist made it. It's beautiful. And yes, this nebula is called the Crab Nebula because the range of its legs, so it said, but others have also compared these outstretchings to an octopus's tentacles. And so if you're having a hard time seeing these legs or arms that I'm talking about, look mainly at the pink sections and a little bit at the yellow, and I find it helps you paint a picture of what you're looking at. I am the nebula. On to another nebula, the Twin Jet Nebula, also known as a space butterfly. So this cosmic butterfly looking thing is actually a 2-lobed nebula. It has the official name PNM2-9, and it was originally spotted back in 1947. It's more commonly known as the Twin Jet Nebula because really it looks like 2 jets coming out of the back of a rocket ship colliding into one another and then the blasts radiating outwards. I feel like you could even argue it's 2 pop bottles head to head shrouded in like a green atmosphere. But then if you look right in the center, I say it looks like a fairy from Legend of Zelda, which looks a bit like a butterfly. So that's where you get the name Cosmic Butterfly. Mystery solved. The Twin Jet Nebula is obviously a fairy from Legend of Zelda. You're welcome. So our number 1 is the D&D asteroid. And obviously this one is my number 1 because I am a gamer. A tabletop role-playing gamer, that is. Asteroid 2017 BQ6 has been compared to dice used in playing Dungeons & Dragons and also other tabletop games because of its angular shape. And you kind of have to know that this is kind of odd because most planets and stuff around space is rounded. Kind of looks like a bunch of either spheres or just potatoes passing through. And so this asteroid passed from a distance of about 1.6 million miles away, but it didn't, land anywhere like dice usually do. And like, if you think about it, there's already enough people thinking we are living in a simulation. But guys, what if we live in a game? One of their dice in the great unknown fell into space, and now they're laughing at us because we rolled a natural 1 on perception. A simulation game. You're thinking The Sims, I'm thinking they're just dictating each of our lives with dice rolls. It's all up to random. Who knows?
Coming in at number 10, we have Saturn's screaming poles. These sound well and truly spine-chilling. These sounds rival anything a space horror composer could score, and these are natural sounds from Saturn's poles. These were recorded by NASA's Cassini spacecraft in 2002, and they're radio waves that come from Saturn's aurora, so very similar to the light phenomenon at our aurora borealis on Earth. So imagine the swirling green, pinks and yellow lights accompanying these sounds, which have been sped up with a slight frequency adjust so our human ears can hear them. This sound comes from one of my favourite YouTube channels, Space Audio. They were uploaded in March 2015. Now Cassini completed its space mission in 2017, losing contact as it made a suicide dive into the planet's atmosphere on September 15th. Coming in at number 9, we have Earth's hiss. Wait, the Earth hissed as a spacecraft flew by? Yeah, it did. The recording sounds like a huge breathing dragon. Have a listen. How is that anything other than the rise and fall of breath? It kind of sounds like Darth Vader. Apparently this is sound recorded in 1996 from NASA's polar mission. It's a sound of hot ionized particles generated by sunlight crashing into the atmosphere. It creates a sound like the Earth hissing at us, and to be honest, what with climate change and the rising greenhouse gases, I can understand why the Earth may be pissed enough to hiss.
isn't the first hiss heard from planet Earth by the patient ears of NASA. In 2015, a NASA student balloon experiment using infrared microphones picked up the unsettling sounds from 22 miles above the Earth's surface in New Mexico and Arizona. Coming in at number 8, we have music from the dark side of the moon. It was nothing compared to Pink Floyd, it was kind of a medium-pitched wooing isn't everyone's kind of music, but you know what? Each to their own. The astronauts on the Apollo 10 mission passed around the moon, and when they were the farthest side away from Earth, the dark side, they lost all radio contact with ground control and the rest of us Earthlings. As Apollo careered around the moon, they heard some very weird sounds, like really weird sounds. So weird that the astronauts talked about it constantly. The weird sounds were not reported at the time, but they were recorded and received by NASA when the mission returned to Earth. The recordings were then classified, which means that they were being safeguarded from human ears. Why? We're not sure. In 2008, the newly declassified recordings were found, and we can hear the weird woo noises for ourselves. Have a listen.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Yeah.
The astronauts are talking about it constantly, and NASA hasn't really returned to the moon since the 70s, and I'm wondering, you know what? Is it because of these weird noises? Conspiracy. Coming in at number 7, we have the mysterious radio signals from deep space. For the last decade, scientists have been picking up unexplained radio signals they call fast radio bursts from deep space. In fact, on the day I scripted this video, August 7th, 2018, more signals were reported. Now these signals have ranged in frequency, but the most recent are 580 megahertz, that's 200 lower than previously heard. The latest sounds detected come from very far away, possibly billions of light years away. Now the radio signals you're about to hear aren't the most recent, but they are pretty unsettling, especially when the thudding kicks in. Just listen. Okay, and then there's some more. It sounds like maybe the plucking of a string, maybe? Currently, scientists don't know where exactly the sounds are coming from, but they are trying to pinpoint them. Coming into number 6, we have Jupiter's crying lightning. The official term for Jupiter's dissonant space whirs is Jovian whistles. These are descending and ascending sounds created by lightning strikes in the atmosphere. As you may know, Jupiter is a decidedly stormy planet, with its red eye being a giant storm that has raged non-stop for over 350 years. Jupiter, you stormy old babe. But I mean, let's have a listen to these terrifying shrieks. There's kind of like a shwam, shwam sound, and it kind of sounds like something being launched, like shoo, shoo. What is this about? It's the weirdest lightning I've honestly ever heard. I don't think you can actually hear lightning on Earth. Maybe. This sound was recorded by Jupiter's Voyager in the 70s, so they're around 40 years old. Now the planet is likely still screaming in its stormy areas and has been for hundreds of years. Can you even imagine? Coming into number 5, we have Ganymede's ghoulish shrieks. Honestly, I feel like Jupiter's moon Ganymede is trying hard to tell us something here. One of Jupiter's 16 moons, Ganymede, is officially the biggest moon in our solar system with a radius of 2,634 kilometers. This makes her bigger than both Mercury and Pluto, and 2/3 the size of Mars. Hey there, big moon, what you doing? This big moon has its own magnetosphere, which creates some big noises, and they're pretty unsettling. Their sounds were recorded in 1996 by the Galileo spacecraft. The initial approach into the magnosphere is punctuated by strong bursts of noises. Then comes some stranger computer beeping like sounds. Have a little listen. Right? Then through the beeps comes windy sounding whirs, then the whole thing crescendos with beeps interspersed with what sounds like alien cries. Tell me what you think. Terrifying, right? Coming into number 4, we have the screams of a dying star. So it turns out that stars have feelings too, and why shouldn't they? They're much bigger than us, and we're actually kind of like teeny weeny blips, like atoms compared to a star, or even smaller. In 2012, scientists at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center released an artist's impression of a black hole swallowing a screaming star. The real-life star was spotted falling into a huge black hole 3.9 billion light years away in the constellation of Draco. It seems as the stars get sucked in, they release blips of light every 200 seconds, which NASA thinks are like screams. As the star is so far away, we haven't got an actual sound recording that the star made. Scientists say that the frequency of the light, if converted to the sound, would sound like a very low D sharp. NASA buffs can predict what this sound is like based on the oscillations that have been observed by smaller matter falling into smaller black holes in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Coming into number 3, we have a creepy singing comet. In 2014, scientists recorded a strange whirring, almost alien-like sounding noises. The clicking, vibrating sounds get even higher in frequency and sound very much like I would imagine an alien trying to communicate with us sounds. The Rosetta orbiter picked up the sounds from the 67P CG comet in August 2014. Have a little listen. So I don't know what is going on, but neither does head researcher Karl-Heinz Gleismeister, whose team was baffled by the noise. The European Space Agency think that the sounds must be coming as a result of a process of oscillation from the comet in orbit. I'm still so confused as to why scientists always give space objects such sterile names like 67P CG. You really missed a trick here. Anyway, what do you make to these sounds and the singing comet? Coming in at number 2, we have the heartbeat of a black hole. So this is a thing apparently, and actually I'm terrified. I thought that black holes were where things went to die, but it turns out that they may have a little soul going on in there. While we can't directly see or hear what black holes are like, we can see and hear what they do to their environment. In 2008, an MIT professor, Edward Morgan, translated X-ray data from the star system GRS 1915-105. He then turned it into sound. Now the binary star system is a black hole and a star that feeds into it, and this is what it sounds like. So kind of like a heartbeat, the beating of a deep, dark, all-consuming black heart. How romantic and seriously twisted. Okay, finally, I am pretty sure that listening to this will actually send you mad, like bonkers never be the same again mad. I was listening to this with earphones while researching this video, and I had to take them off because it sounded like there was a drill going through my brain. Coming into number 1, we have echoes from Titan. Titan is one of Saturn's moons. The sounds you're supposed to hear right now were recorded from Huygens, an atmospheric entry probe sent by the European Space Agency into a suicide landing onto the alien moon. The sounds are absolutely far out. It starts with a beating and then some interstabbing robotic sounds. Listen.
And I went off the deep end.
Ed Kemper has been serving a life sentence in this California.
Then, well, whatever this is, buzzing, brain numbing, buzzing.
At age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out.
What do you think? Can you deal with that? Okay, this is where it gets awful. It reaches into a crescendo where you think your brain will explode.
And I did it in my society.
Seriously, stop Titan, stop this, Titan's kicking off. You may want to couple this sound with images taken from Titan 2, together they're quite the intergalactic horror story.
In our number 10 spot, we have radio signals. Apparently for 15 years now, researchers and astronomers have been receiving ultra bright and ultra strong signals lasting only a few milliseconds, but still notable to observe. These flashes have been called FRBs, fast radio bursts, and apparently they appear to be coming from billions of light years away. It has been said that of course they are not aliens. Of course they would say that. Oh really? So you're so sure that they're not aliens? Okay. Well then what are they? They don't actually know. People are funny. They don't know where they're coming from and what they mean, but they know for sure that it is not by any means aliens. I reject this conclusion. How do they know that when
when they know nothing about where they're coming from. Sounds like fake news to me. In our number 9 spot, we have the moon. Aw, the idea of a moon with a little baby brother or sister is just so cute. Well, as silly as this may sound, it's a real theory. Apparently it's been known by its internet name, the Moon. I like it. To the point. Clear cut. I get it. The Moon has a few other names. The sub-moon, the moonitos, personal favorite of mine, grand moons, and moonettes, to name a few. So anyways, it hasn't technically been discovered yet, but in theory, it is possible apparently. One day we shall discover the moonitos, aka moon, and it shall be a good day for mankind. In our number 8 spot, we have space pasta. Apparently it has been discovered that the strongest substance in the universe is something called nuclear pasta. Nuclear pasta is protons and neutrons in a star's shriveled husk. It is formed from what is left of a dead star. It has crazy gravitational pressure, which squeezes the protons and neutrons into linguine-like tangles of material. Hence the pasta name. Gosh, I hate when unedible things are named after food. It's just wrong. Hearing them just makes me hungry and it sucks. But anyways, thinking of a leftover star forming to create a sort of space pasta is pretty cool. I feel like that could be the premise of a fun children's book. If you turn this into a book, I don't care about the copyright rights, just dedicate the book to me and thank me for being an idea guy. In our number 7 spot, we have Tabby's star. A star has been found, but this isn't any normal star. This is a star that apparently dips in and out of brightness at irregular intervals and for unusual lengths of time, apparently up to a 22% dimming in brightness. The Tabby star was discovered by astronomer Tabitha Boyajian of Louisiana State University. People have debated over what the heck is going on here, why is it dimming so much, and some of the theories I am definitely on board for, like the idea of an alien megastructure. What a cool thought. The most popular theory is that it's really just a large ring of dust that's causing the dimming. Nah, that theory sucks. Alien megastructure for the win. In our number 6 spot, we have infrared light. Astronomers have discovered that there is a long stream of infrared light coming from what is known as a neutron star, which is basically dense objects formed after the death of a regular star. But get this, the infrared light is coming from 800 light years away. I know this may not mean anything to you if you don't know much about space, but from what I've gathered, this is something that has never been observed before. Yet again, the only operating theory is that it's just dust surrounding the star, but no one really knows. It's crazy to think that neutron stars are constantly emitting high energy radiation comparable to X-rays, and that this one traveled 800 light years. It makes you think about how that could possibly affect us and what we don't know that we don't know. In our number 5 spot, we have rogue planets. Rogue planets are basically baby planets that have been flung away from their parent star due to gravitational forces. There is one that has been found that is known as, well, are you ready? Because this one's a mouthful. Simp J01365663 plus 09334773. Wow. Couldn't they have just given it a fun name like Melissa? I should write to them. Or they could even use my last name because I made it up, so there's no other star or person like it. NASA, you have my permission. Melody may be given to a star phenomena. You're welcome. Anyways, Simp J plus 15 numbers is apparently considered a rogue planet object that's 200 light years away, and the magnetic force and the magnetic field is supposedly more than 200 times stronger than Jupiter's. A strong force can make flashing auras, and this can be seen with radio telescopes. In our number 4 spot, we have the moon Hyperion. A lot of astronomers have said that the weirdest moon that has been discovered so far is Jupiter's moon, which is called Hyperion. Hyperion is truly a weird shape, not quite round like our moon, and it's full of craters. It looks like a rock that you might find on the beach that you throw into the water because it doesn't look as pretty as the more colorful rock. Am I right, or am I right, or am I right? Apparently it has a very chaotic rotation. Its axis of rotation apparently wobbles so much that its orientation in space is unpredictable. It is also known to be composed largely of water ice. Only a small amount of it is actually rock. Interesting. In our number 3 spot we have high energy neutrino. NASA's Fermi telescope helped astronomers discover something miraculous on September 22nd, 2017. They identified a monster black hole in a far-off galaxy as the source of a high-energy neutrino that was projected at this planet, planet Earth, and seen by the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory. Apparently it hit the Antarctic ice with energy of about 300 trillion electron volts. For perspective, that is more than 45 times the energy achievable by the most powerful particle accelerator on Earth. Well, to think that this had no effect on humanity at all would be a serious lack of understanding how everything in life affects one another. To know that the gravitational pull of the moon affects the tides in the ocean is to know that this energy strike absolutely affected us somehow, whether we understand it or not. I scrolled back and saw that I did get my Reiki license that day, so no wonder I feel magic in my blood. It was the neutrino particles from galaxies away. Even though it hit Antarctica and not Canada, but we're on the same planet, so whatever, it fits my narrative and I'm sticking to it. Coming up in our number 2 spot we have a strange galaxy. In 2016, astronomers discovered a new galaxy that was called an ultra-diffuse galaxy because it's as big as a galaxy like the Milky Way, but its stars are spread out thinly. It was called the DG-SAT-1. It is strange because unlike most other galaxies, this one was sitting all alone. It was a loner. Others are typically found in clusters. It has also been said that it seems to be an object formed in a different era of the universe, approximately 1 billion or so years after the Big Bang. Some think DG-SAT is a living fossil. Interesting. In our number 1 spot today, we have the cosmic cliffs of the Carina Nebula. In a very recent broadcast at NASA headquarters, NASA released new photos from the James Webb Space Telescope that has helped astrologers gather data that they never had before. There was one picture in particular that was of the cosmic cliffs of the Carina Nebula. With this picture, astronomers were able to see brand new stars that were completely hidden before. The host spoke about how by looking at the photo you get a sense of depth and texture. They also discovered over 100 or more new stars, bubbles and cavities and jets that are being blown out by these newborn stars, galaxies, lurking in the background of this picture. They saw structures that have never been seen before that have left them puzzled as well. The cliffs of Carina Nebula are extremely strange but beautiful to look at.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the missile test. I personally subscribe to the idea that there probably aren't any areas of space that would be a good place to blow something up, but apparently, really recently, Russia chose a really bad one. On November 15th, just weeks ago, a missile test occurred just a short 300 miles above Earth, and when the 4,850-pound satellite exploded, it created a cloud of fragments that set off the emergency response on the International Space Station, which was a little too close for comfort. Like, man, there are people on there who are just trying to grow a pepper and prove the Earth is round and stuff. The astronauts aboard awoke from their sleep to probably the most frightening alarm they've ever heard in their lives and had to prepare to possibly and quickly evacuate the space outpost. Luckily they are all fine, but the explosion created a ton of orbital debris now that we are going to see the consequences of for the next few decades. We add more debris into the already crowded orbit of Earth faster than we clear it up, which creates problems for future spacecrafts and creates more potential collisions that need to be avoided at all costs. In our number 9 spot today we have 99942 Apophis. This little asteroid has a diameter of about 1/5 of a mile and it is currently sitting at number 3 on the Palermo scale. This is something I'll refer to again today, so let's just talk about it real quick. The Palermo Technical Impact Scale is a scale that is used by astronomers to rate the potential risk and hazard of impact of a near-Earth object, or an NEO. It used the combined information and data of the probability of impact coupled with the estimated kinetic yield, which basically just shows us how likely and how badly an asteroid would mess us up, re the dinosaurs. So back to Apophis. This asteroid is at rank number 3, so it's the third thing we gotta worry about. When it was discovered in 2004, astronomers gave it a 1 in 60 chance of striking Earth in May of 2029 on Friday the 13th of all days. If it doesn't strike Earth, with the naked eye we'll be able to see it pass at a distance of roughly 18,600 miles, but if it does strike Earth, we'll also be able to see it with the naked eye, just at a much closer distance. Because of how close this passing asteroid is going to be, if the asteroid passes us at a slightly different angle than current predictions, there is the possibility of collision in 2036 or 2069. In our number 8 spot today we have the Swift-Tuttle Comet. This is obviously a comet, and while it isn't exactly orbiting Earth, it is in an orbit that causes it to make repeated close approaches to both us here on Earth as well as our sweet little moon. Here's the thing, we keep trying to calculate the next passage of the comet. I say we like I'm doing any kind of calculating. Experts keep trying to calculate the next passage of the comet, but it's always off by like 15-ish days. What's also super cool is that the nucleus of this comet is quite large, which is truly concerning for us. That's not the cool part, but when experts realized that, they started looking back through texts and documents of the past to see if this comet had been observed before, and it seems like it had been in 69 BC and 188 AD. That is so cool! The good news is that for now, if all the calculations are correct, we don't have to worry about anything in our lifetime. Sorry to those living in the year 3000 though. In our number 7 spot today we have Envisat. This was a large environmental satellite that was launched by the European Space Agency on March 1st, 2002, and it was the world's largest civilian Earth observation satellite. It lasted for twice its expected life length as it monitored the environmental health of Earth for a decade, but in April of 2012, without any warning, it totally stopped all communications. This means that its status and location are completely unknown. The size of this thing is one of the main concerning points of this, as it is 85 by 32 feet and weighs a common cool 18,000 pounds. Since we don't know where it is and have no control over it, it's simply up to space and the laws of physics now. It is predicted that the uncontrolled descent of the satellite to Earth will likely take place over the next 150 years or so, and it threatens the risk of injury and damage. There's also a 15 to 30% chance that it'll collide with other space junk and cause a major fragmentation event. In our number 6 spot today we have 29075. Okay, we talked about number 3 on that scale, so are you ready for number 1? On the Palermo scale for the last several years, the asteroid 29075 has been given the highest rating because of its large size, coming in with a diameter about 2/3 of a mile. This would have absolutely devastating effects on the biosphere and climate if it were to strike Earth, again re the dinosaurs. There's good news about this one though. If it does hit Earth, we'll all be long gone and we will miss it entirely. The chance of an encounter doesn't get too close for comfort until 2880, so for now we're in the clear. In our lifetime we only have to worry about, well, a bunch of other things on this list and student debt. In our number 5 spot today we have the Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched in 1990 by NASA in cooperation with the European Space Agency, and together they placed the very first space observatory into orbit. Something that we only dreamed of for hundreds of years finally accomplished. Since 1990 the Hubble has produced over 1.3 million images of the solar system, the stars, and the galaxies. It is one of the most incredible scientific creations in terms of space exploration, and it really set the tone for all of the advancements we've had since. It's been in orbit for a long time, and the 27,000-pound solar-powered observatory is coming close to retirement, and that means that NASA has a couple of options. They can either craft up a controlled return to Earth, they can boost it higher into orbit, or they can try to design a new mission to increase the longevity of the scope. But basically, they need to make their minds up, because the longer it stays in orbit, the more it decays due to Earth's pull. This could have disastrous results, as an uncontrolled re-entry can occur sometime between 2028 and 2030. Imagine, the thing that's helped us so much turns its back on us. And so it begins, the robot takeover. In our number 4 spot today we have 2020 CD3. In February of 2020, astronomers found 2020 CD3, which is a tiny near-Earth asteroid or mini-moon that orbits the Sun, but it does make really close approaches to our Earth-Moon system, and it can even temporarily enter Earth's orbit. It is the second temporary satellite of Earth discovered in situ. Basically, on its trajectory, this asteroid was captured by Earth around 2016 or 2017, but it likely escaped the gravitational influence of Earth around May 2020. Even the asteroid didn't want to stick around for the pandemic. 2020 CD3 is likely to make another close pass at Earth in 2044, but it hopefully won't be captured by Earth this time because of its greater approach distance. While this little thing is flying through space and makes its nice little frequent visits to us, the good news is that it is relatively small in terms of asteroids, so it's not like an imminent threat to humanity yet. In our number 3 spot today we have Cosmos 1818. Despite the name, this was a nuclear spy satellite that was launched by the Soviet Union in 1987. By this time there was already another nuclear satellite that had fallen out of orbit and left a trail of radioactive debris over Canada, but we said what the hell, the Canadians began apologizing to us for some reason, so let's just try it again. The Soviet Union launched Cosmos 1818 into higher orbit than the previous one to try and avoid another similar situation, but in 2008 that proved to not work at all when the satellite began breaking down and leaking what is thought to be coolant. The breakdown is thought to have occurred from either some kind of a collision or simply just a system failure. According to Russian sources, at the moment the satellite is expected to simply burn up in the atmosphere of Earth when it leaves orbit in 2045, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little suspicious about this. It seems like it can't just be that simple, but hey, I'm not Bill Nye, so what do I know? In our number 2 spot today we have SNAP 10A. This nuclear fission satellite was the first nuclear reactor placed into orbit, and it was part of a project that the US government was conducting where they were experimenting with power production in space. The SNAP stands for System for Nuclear Auxiliary Power. The satellite was launched in 1965 but was less than successful when it performed for merely 43 days before quitting out because of an electric system failure. So here's where things get a little concerning. The satellite is still currently in orbit, and it's expected to stay there for the next 3,000 years, which is great and happy and exciting unless you're trying to travel through its orbit. But since none of us are astronauts and don't have that problem, we're good unless it collides with something else, which it is very vulnerable to do. This would potentially cause nuclear radiation to be released. Yeah, I mean, have you heard of Chernobyl? In our number 1 spot today we have SL-16RB. That probably sounds like a name I just made up, but this is the name of a bunch of rocket boosters that are currently in the orbit of Earth. Most of them were launched by Russia and the Soviet Union between 1989 and 2007, and each booster weighs 9,000 kilograms and orbits at an altitude of 800 kilometers. Here's where this all becomes an issue though. There's 20 of these things in orbit, and should 2 of them collide, well, the resulting debris would be absolutely catastrophic. 2 9,000 kilogram objects colliding would double the low Earth orbit debris, and as we already know, the amount we already have is a huge problem. Right now these boosters are all orbiting together in clusters, but it's really a roll of the dice each year. The probability of collision goes up. So yeah, things we don't normally talk about are actually pretty terrifying.